The Honourable Member Mike Sabin.
Thank you, sir. I think the member Jacinda Ardern is quite correct. Things do change, absolutely. That's the nature of the beast. Positions certainly do change, and polls change, and leaders of political parties change, and the global financial conditions change, and the landscape in Canterbury changes. And that's pretty much how it goes. Things do change, positions do change, and that's exactly the position that New Zealand has found itself in recent years. And what this government has done, much to the criticism of people like Jacinda Ardern and the Labour Party and their friends over there with the Greens and New Zealand First, has criticised the government for supporting those who are most vulnerable, for supporting those who need. They've continued to vote against everything this government has done to grow the economy on the one hand, while on the other hand criticise us for letting people, on their view, fall through the cracks. And I say, sir, that members can't have it both ways. So the member Jacinda Ardern is quite correct. Things do change. And for what it's worth, putting a figure of a matter of weeks, the difference between the New Zealand National Party's position of extending moderately paid parental leave, the difference between 14 weeks, 16 weeks, 18 weeks, 26 weeks, that's not what we should be talking about, because the reality is children need their parents in the formative years. And that is the case regardless of how many weeks paid parental leave exist. And sometimes, sir, that means that parents must be prepared to make a sacrifice. And the member Sue Moroney, as a parent, I'm sure has. And every parent in this House will know that sometimes sacrifices must be made. And sometimes that means surviving on one income. Not for 16 weeks, 18 weeks, 26 weeks, but often for 5 years or for longer. Sir, because that's what children demand of good parenting, and that's what good parenting is about, is ensuring that those formative years are spent with the child. So we can debate whether 16 weeks is where it should be or whether 26 weeks is where it should be. I think there's actually a bigger debate to be had here, sir, about the fact that New Zealand parents, you can't just, or sorry, not you, sir, but parents can't just expect that they can go about their professional working lives and not invest their time into their children and expect that they'll get the same results than if they are willing to make the sacrifice and spend that time at home with their children. Because ultimately that is an important time of a child's developing life. And yes, it is true that in spending that time with their children, many parents will do it hard for a while, sir. But in this modern era, when we look at even, say, this government's approach to supporting families, a $500 million package, it is substantial. When we look at, what would, I guess, consider the more financially challenged or vulnerable families, a family of two children earning somewhere in the order of $50,000 is essentially tax neutral, sir. So they will receive from the government as much support as what they will pay in tax. In fact, actually, the member, Jonathan Young, is quite right. Actually, more so. That seems to me to be quite unprecedented, sir. I certainly, when I was bringing up young children, I don't remember that to be the case. It is certainly the case that MMP creates an environment, sir, that when we see Labour governments that come up with lolly-scramble ideas, that once families become reliant or dependent on a degree of support, it's very hard to actually withdraw that support. Now, that's not to say that to some extent there wasn't some support needed in the first place, but what is fair to say is once people are given an opportunity to have something that they don't necessarily need, they'll certainly want to hang on to that, sir. And I'm not so sure that MMP has been a particularly good electoral system for our families, because in many ways what it's done is created a default that what's in it for me, what will the government give me so that I can be a better parent? Well, nothing. The government can't give anything to someone to be a better parent, because being a better parent is not about defaulting to the government. Being a better parent is about making decisions that are in the best interest of that child.
I call the Honourable Member Kamaljeet Singh Bakshi. Sat Sri Akal.
Sat Sri Akal, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much for the opportunity. We